Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbaugh.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Leaders, and today I'm excited because I get the opportunity to really have a good discussion about something that's kind of been bothering me for a long time, about being nice, but not too nice. Doug Sandler grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, with his older brother, David. His parents split when he was 2 years old, but Doug remembers growing up and loving life as a little kid. Even though they had no money, they laughed and enjoyed life. His mom has been a huge inspiration in his life. Although he was not personally close to his dad, he was a strong influence in his business life. His father was cut short in his mid-60s, and he still follows that advice that he thinks his dad would be providing even to this day. Doug has always had a love for the service aspect of any job, from food service in college to the mortgage business when out of college, real estate, DJ, podcaster, author, blogger, speaker. Doug Sandler is an entrepreneur and industry leader. His book, Nice Guys Finish First, is a #1 ranked Amazon bestseller, and as a podcast host of the Nice Guys on Business, Doug has interviewed Gary Vaynerchuk, Arianna Huffington from HuffPost, Dan Harris from Good Morning America, Ron Klain, White House Chief of Staff, and dozens of celebrities. Doug is a nationally recognized speaker, writer, and founder of Turnkey Podcast Company, providing podcast production, editing, and launch services. The legacy Doug wants to leave behind is that nice guys finish first. He currently lives in the Washington, D.C. area with his wife, Danielle, and 2 kids, Adam and Rachel. Doug Sandler, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Hump Day is here. Come on, Jim, let's do it.
Woohoo! I love it. I'm glad you're here. I've
never heard a 1,500-word bio read in 32 seconds. So nicely done.
I appreciate that. Now, what people don't know is I probably messed it up 3 or 4 times, and I'm editing it so you hear it clean.
Well, and those of you in Jim's community that are listening to this at 1.5 or 2x speed, slow it down.
Oh, man. I tell you, we're going to have a good time today. Oh, yeah. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Oh, I love the podcasting space. This new media space has been great. After reinventing my career probably a handful of years ago, I discovered this space and fall in love with it. And there's no better way to make money than from your pajamas. So I do love it for that reason.
You know, that's a really interesting point. I mean, because you and I had the opportunity to talk off mic, and we talked about the prior life and how you kind of, I think many of us, we should be more aware and mindful and kind of follow the money. And so a lot of my listeners are actually within organizations, and sometimes they have to follow the money for others, right? But even from an individual perspective, and the whole nice guys concept for me, and when you start thinking about, being too nice and that really tipping point to where you become someone who gets walked on. I've always kind of struggled with that. Like, how much is too much nice?
Yeah, I want to, can I comment on something that you said just a moment ago first, and then I'll get into how much nice is too much nice. But what you said was a lot of people follow the money, and I do agree with that. People do follow the money. And even when they work for organizations, they follow other people's money, I guess. But what I would say is step back, because you do have the right, when you are working for another organization, to follow still what you love. Follow your love, follow the thing that you're passionate about. And that doesn't mean that you have to be your own person and be an entrepreneur and take all the risk. You can still have a wonderful life working for someone else within their organization. So I'm not conflicting with what you're saying, but I wanted to add a yes and. You can still follow what you love to do even when you work for someone else. There's plenty of people that do that, whether it's in architecture, engineering, or professionalism, or whatever it is that they're doing.
Yeah, I'm glad that you added that. As a matter of fact, Lori Bachlan on the last episode actually just talked about that yes and that she learned in her improv class.
Oh yeah, it's the greatest, and I do feel like instead of saying but, the yes and is an easy way to go. I never took improv, but a lot of my friends have been through the comedy route. So for me, it's really is very interesting to hear the yes and it does make you feel a little bit better when you hear and let me add this instead of but and the buts always stop me dead in my tracks.
Well, that's an interesting point. So, okay, so we're talking about nice and too nice, but I would dare to say if you are nice, you're definitely using the yes and instead of but.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that now it becomes my habit. Not the yes and, because I don't know why those words even came in my head. I don't think I've used those words for weeks or months, the yes and. But let me answer the other question, which is really cool. I think that as we discuss, nice guys finish first, it wasn't just a book that I wrote, but it's the anti-nice guys finish last mentality. It really is. You can be a nice guy. You can be vulnerable. You can be empathetic and show gratitude and do all of those things that I would consider being nice. Without being a doormat. It doesn't mean that you're a pushover at all. It means that you understand even more firmly the ground and the security of the ground that you're standing on, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, but still be a leader, still be strong and not be stepped on.
Well, okay, so that's really interesting. So as you were talking, I started thinking, and the word that popped in my head was values. And really talking about that firm ground and knowing where you need to stand. And that values component, because I know for me, I feel like I am a nice guy, but then I've also let certain environments, change, my demeanor. So where it wasn't so nice, because I kind of lost sight of what my values were and got caught up in the moments. And of course, as I got older, I could reflect and be able to identify those. But when I was in it, I didn't necessarily do it all that well. So, how can somebody make sure that they're always grounded well?
I think you just have to understand where you are and who you are. And as long as you're comfortable with your skin, those tapes that are going off in your head that tell you to, once you're down, to stay down, you've got to erase those tapes. You've got to put yourself in a position to win every time. You've got to put yourself in a position. It's not the circumstances that life is going to deliver to you. It's how you handle the circumstances in your life that's going to make all the difference in the world. We're all dealing with the same exact scenarios. We all are given the same opportunities out there. If you don't think that you are, you're not putting yourself in a position. A lot of people say, well, you've been lucky. You've been able to reinvent your career and look how fast it's gone. It hasn't gone fast. In my mind, it's so slow. It feels like an overnight success in 30 years. It takes you a long time to get there. I could have turned around based upon the circumstances that have happened in my life. My dad passing away in his mid-60s and not having that leadership role in my life any longer. My mom becoming ill at some point. Everybody in my family around me having cancer and devastation. And I could look at that and say, my gosh, there is so much. I don't know if your show is explicit, but if it's not, there's so much poop in this world. And I look at that and say, with all this poop around, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. And I think it's just a matter of how we respond to the circumstances that are dealt in our life. Part of it is, understanding that you can say no, be a nice guy, still say no, say it gently, say it with empathy, say it with compassion and conviction, and still have a friend on the other side of that no, because they respect where you are, because you've consistently taken action the same way throughout your entire life. And that really is what the true definition of nice is to me: consistent attitude, consistent behavior, and it's all positive.
Yeah, I think thanks for sharing that. I also started thinking too, talking about that environmental component and proximity and all those things that we have really to contend with in today's world. Because I was talking to somebody the other day and I was like, well, I've actually worked out of a home office with the jobs that I've had, over the past 17 years. I've been in a home office. And so sometimes the whole, proximity component, not being around certain people and, having that negative, thing constantly being on your shoulder and pressure to perform and pressure. All these things, it's kind of hard to slough those things off, and really remain positive. So when you start thinking about, especially in the environment that we are today and thinking about the nice guys, philosophy, values and all of that, do you think it's declining or it's actually growing?
Well, I think because technology is so prevalent nowadays, we see so much more than we have ever seen. So I would love to be able to say, I think negativity or positivity or whatever it is, I can put a number on it and say it's more prevalent now. I would tell you that the negativity is certainly exposed a lot more often than ever now because of social media. You know, you have a problem with an organization or a leader within an organization, you're going to see it oftentimes directly on social media. People are, they give themselves a mental enema almost every day on social media and share all of the crap that's going on in their life, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not sure. From an other perspective, I think that the good in the world is shown a lot more now based upon social, the way that social media and the technology is out there. When a small act is rewarded or gratitude is shown through social media, that's good as well. I think that nowadays the lead in towards being nice is definitely stronger now than it's ever been because people realize how exposed their message and their brand is to the public. All we have to do, it's so easy to get onto the computer and bash a company or say great things about them. So companies are very aware that it's no longer Nike, let's say. It's that person in service that is dealing with Nike. They now represent the entire Nike brand to that person that they're dealing with. You better believe that there's got to be some instructions given to that person in service and support, how they have to handle or what they should be doing and how their customer service should be to that one customer.
You know, that's interesting that you say that. I mean, for me, I try to refrain, and you see it a lot in this industry that I work in, which is customer care, customer experience, where a lot of the influencers, I wouldn't say a lot, some of the influencers in the industry and experts in the industry, that word kind of has shaky ground in itself, but, like to, videotape and then therefore on their own social platforms push out the bad experience they had at a restaurant or an airline or a retailer. And I try not to do that, and even when people, ask me to contribute to certain things and they're like, hey, tell us about your worst experience. I mean, I'm like, I kind of cringe when I want to do that because there's just so much of that negativity. I mean, I would choose to rather, focus in on, the opportunity that exists. Okay, so if we have all of these things that are going on that are so negative and not, customer centric and focused, what about the things that are, and how do we actually get to that point? Let's ditch the bad and focus on the good.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that I've never said a negative word on social media, but that wouldn't be the reality. Even as a nice guy, I still have negativity that happens in my life. And I want to expose that to those that are close to me. If they ask me my opinion on a particular product or I have an issue on my show all the time, and I have 600 episodes of the Nice Guys on Business podcast under my belt. We've done plenty of negative, hey, listen, this happened on this airline or this happened with this brand. And we like to see how they respond. I think that you give them an opportunity. We invite people on our show all the time. We invite people to respond to us on social media all the time. Some big brands tend to or choose to ignore it. And some big brands, I like to see where people sit because I'm in the world of customer service. So for me, I love putting somebody to the test and having them pass the test. I'll give them accolades if they pass the test, but I'll also give them negative words if they don't pass the test. Aren't I important as a customer? Why would my word be any, why would they want to ignore me? I'm just a guy that has a product or service that has that they've presented their product or service. I have a problem with it. Let's hear what they have to say. I'm curious. I always am curious.
Yeah. I mean, as you were talking, I started thinking about too, as far as the process by which you go and actually share that feedback, right? I mean, I remember this one time where I was sitting next to a guy, on a flight. And I mean, he was just enraged the fact that he wasn't able to be in first class. And not only was he not in first class, he was at the very, very back of the plane, right against the bathroom. So, I mean, needless to say, he couldn't recline his seat and he had noise the entire trip. But, I booked my flight late and it's what I expected.
Right.
But I mean, he was just nasty. And I'm like, do you think that would ever get you moved up?
Yeah, there's got to be that limit in your head that says, I think this is fair based upon the circumstance. How much of this is me just wanting to run my mouth because I feel like I'm being anonymous in my bashing, and how much of this is, if that CEO was sitting in front of me, would I be okay having that conversation? And I always, the test that I run it through is I'd love to have a conversation. I'd love to invite that person on my show so that they could actually share why it happened this way and how we can try to resolve this from happening again. I don't know. I think it's a very challenging thing. I think that social media and technology makes it so easy for us to complain. On the other side of it, Jim, it makes it so easy for us to be able to say positive things too. And we do much more of that than we do of bashing on our show. And for me personally, I do the same thing. I love being able to share great news and great information as well.
Yeah, and I think really that's the key. I mean, we just need to outdo what the norm is, and the norm is that most people complain especially when it comes to customer service and customer experience, than they do praise. Someone was talking to me the other day about a letter that they received, and I was actually kind of shocked. I'm like, people still do that? They wrote a letter? And I'm like, how old was that person? Well, sure enough, it was someone who was of older age who was more familiar with the writing process. But every once in a while, I think we do have to pull out the pen or even pencil, whatever it is, and just write a note.
We call it catching people in the act, catching them in the act of doing something right. And if we can do that a little bit more often, I think that you'll have a lot, that's all a part of that. If there's a philosophy behind what nice is, it's showing gratitude and compassion and empathy, and showing the gratitude instead of being so negative and being so critical of everyone. I challenge you, those that are in Jim's community listening to this right now, when you stop listening to this episode at your office or whoever it is that you talk to next, find something that they are doing right and compliment them. It's so easy to do, and it's almost like it's a selfish act because it makes you feel almost better than it makes them feel as well. I always want people to feel better about themselves after having had met me than before they got in my company.
I'm glad you said that. So for me, I think one of the best pieces of feedback that I received the other day was a video call that I had with somebody. And when the call was over with, and between their laughing, they said, I really appreciate, because every time I talk to you, you help me see things more clearly, and it removed the worry that I had off my shoulder. To me, that was the best feedback I think I could have ever received.
That's great. That's great. And that shows that you're in the right zone. And when something negative happens to a nice guy like you or like me or like many of the tens of thousands, millions of nice guys that are out there, when the negative thing happens, you just have to remember all of that positivity that's come back. And don't let that negative action put you in a period of stinking thinking. Just stay your course and keep that nice attitude. It's all about consistency, and that's what people expect from you.
I believe it. Okay, so what we're talking about here, talking about the nice, talking about really improving our emotional intelligence skills, and we want to do that as an organization. But that path, a lot of times we need to have beacons of light, and one of the things that we look at on the show as a beacon of light are quotes. Is there a quote or two that you can share?
Sure. I don't remember. I think it might have been Henry Ford. I can't remember who said this, but whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. I'm trying to remember who it was that said that. And it's so true. I mean, all of the things that we want to accomplish in life, whether it's personal or professional, if you think that you can, maybe it was Dale Carnegie. I can't remember. If you put your head in the right position and you think that you can do it, you absolutely will be able to do it. And if you're negative about it and you don't think that you can do it, the same task, you're not going to be able to accomplish it.
As you were talking, I started thinking about and I've mentioned him before, my oldest son, is that he's more motivated by fear. And so a lot of the things that will come out of his mouth are negative. And that's what happens when you kind of got to have that fear wiring. And I keep telling him, I'm like, whatever comes out of your mouth is what you are. He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, if you talk about negative things, you become negative. I said, if you talk about, other people in a bad way, you become that. I mean, I said, you whatever comes out of you, he goes, that's just dumb. And I said, you're reinforcing what, I mean, through your head, whatever you're going to end up feeling.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, maybe it'll click for him. I'm hoping.
The quote was a Henry Ford quote. I quickly looked it up, and it is a Henry Ford quote.
Good job. The beauty of the internet. Right at our fingertips. Okay, so, but, when we start talking about, I mean, and even reading your bio, and you talk about the pivoting, and you talk about all of those things to get to where you are today, is that I'm sure there was a lot of humps that you had to get over. Can you share a story with us so that we can hopefully get over our own?
Sure, absolutely. There's a couple that come to mind, and the one of them, which was really the creation of many of the conscious thought of this nice guys system that I've created over the last 30 plus years, but really instituted within the last handful of years. It was I spent the last 30 years as a DJ, and this family hired me sight unseen to fly down from New Orleans from DC down to New Orleans to do their son's celebration, and I can recall very vividly getting down there. I mean, they paid my bill. They carted me from everywhere. I mean, my ego was so in the way right now because I felt like they really were engaging my services. Within 15 minutes of this 4-hour event, I remember setting up, and they took me to the venue, and the guest list was like 75 or so adults and 50 or so. I would call them kids, but they weren't any kids I've ever seen before. They were more like monsters. So within 15 minutes of this 4-hour event, they had managed to suck the helium out of every balloon, threw pea soup on the walls. They were drinking at the bar at 13 years old. They lit toilet paper on fire in the bathrooms. And this is all within 1/16th of the event, 1/16th, 15 minutes into this 4-hour event. And I did what I thought any self-respecting entertainer or DJ would do at the time. I put my head down, I got focused on my job, and I started playing music. And of course, I was playing music basically to a rowdy room of kids that would not respond no matter what I did. What I discovered during that pivotal moment in my life was, had I actually invested a little bit of time and energy and resources in this client, I would have discovered that this was not only the 49th of 50 events that these kids had been to that year through their, let's call it the bar mitzvah circuit, but they no matter what I did, they wouldn't respond positively. And my feeling was, why were they doing this to me? So I invested no time, energy, or resources in this client. They had gone to so many events. They didn't hire me because they thought I was a good entertainer. They hired me because I was so far geographically out of their area that there was no way that I possibly would have ever heard of these kids. And so you completely take a shift and you say, why didn't I just ask some important questions? Well, somebody might say, well, why didn't they tell you? Well, they don't know what to tell me and what not to tell me. I was the professional. So that's the invest component of my program. And if I actually inspired them to take action, come up with a plan A and a plan B in case this particular, I knew enough to know that potentially could happen, but I didn't arm them with any plans. And then had I actually executed a plan, I mean, I wanted to execute some of those kids, but had I actually executed a plan, I would have carried out these plans perfectly. And so for me, everything that I did in my career so far, I was just getting lucky. Until I created this invest, inspire, and execute system, I'd never realized that there was actually a system that I could have put in place for them.
Oh, I love that story. That's pretty good. They had to go outside of their geographic region, right?
Right. Totally right.
But I think, okay, so as listening to that, I kind of started thinking that, well, part of that is just wisdom, right? I mean, you had to go through the experience in order to know that you needed to come up with the system so that it didn't happen again.
Well, yeah, or you're a guy that's smart enough, as I wasn't at the time, and probably, there's probably things going on all around me right now to know that I should be plugging into a system. I had no system, and that's the problem. There was no consistent effort. There was no phone calls. There was no returns of voicemails. There was no, it was like I would just do whatever I thought I wanted to do in order to get the next job. I was so focused on the transaction and not focused on the relationship that it wasn't good.
That kind of is where a lot of organizations start. In addition to that, they continue to do that way, and then they ultimately become one of those organizations that becomes affected because somebody disrupted them.
Yeah, it's when your services begin to be a commodity because all you're doing is going through the same action that everybody else is going through. And the proof in the pudding for that business, for my entertainment, my DJ business, is that I outlasted, I was 30 years into the business. I've just recently, within the last handful of years, reinvented myself. And what's so great about it is that, the majority of my competition are guys in their 20s and 30s. And, I'm 15 or 20 years older than them and 5 to 10 times more expensive than many of those guys that are in, maybe 3 to 10 times more expensive more than many of those guys that are in my market. So it's like, I know it's not coincidence. It's understanding what customer service means. It's understanding how to invest that time and energy in your client and resources in your client, understanding how to execute a plan. It's not about playing music at a 4-hour event. It's the year and a half that leads up to that event where you can build a relationship. That's the critical component of that business.
That's interesting to say that. So I started thinking about differentiation, right? So, I mean, you can choose how to differentiate, because the fact is you need to do that. How are you going to go about doing that? If you differentiate by product, man, that's a risky proposition these days when you start talking about, the fact that anybody can come and knock you out anywhere around the globe. So to me, the smart choice is to differentiate on the entire experience component.
Well, you have to. When you have nothing, when you have two people that you're never going to compare exactly apples to apples, especially in the entertainment world. If you have a commodity, a light bulb is a light bulb. So what do you do to differentiate yourself from someone that wants to buy from you? It's all going to be in the service and the support. In my particular case, we still have to be able to do a great job on event day. But the challenge is that most people think it is about job day. It's about the celebration. And what I would say is, here, let me give you an example. 2.5 years or 2 years before an event, I've met with a guy and his wife, and they're designing this wonderful celebration. And the host name is Jim. And all the way through the process, I'm calling the guy Jim, and I know it's Jim, and I know it. I own that name. I get to event day, and I'm introducing them, and I say, "Welcome to the stage, John." Okay, so I've screwed that up. On Monday morning, my agent is not going to get a call that says he didn't even know my freaking name, because it was an honest mistake and we got it, and I built a relationship. Now let's take a slightly different track. I don't call this guy. I don't talk to Jim. I don't know anything about Jim. On event day, I just show up and I'm about to do Jim and Jan's job, and they're about to be introduced, and I say, "Welcome to the stage, John." On Monday morning, my agent is going to get a phone call saying, he didn't even take the time to learn my name. Okay. Honest error, honest thing happened. Same exact end result, except a different relationship was built on the first scenario as opposed to the second scenario. I'm going to swim through that first scenario. I'm going to sink in that second scenario.
That's true. I mean, you got to invest in it, right? When I start thinking about where, you've come and where you are, I would suspect that even with a lot of the organizations that you're working with, a lot of the individuals that you're focusing in on, the family, that you've got a lot of, things that you can look at from a goal perspective. But if there was one that you had to choose from, what would it be?
I would say one of the goals is set goals. I think one of the critical components of this reinvention that I went through in 2013, when I discovered that I was not going to be a DJ until I was in my 70s, and I couldn't imagine spending my time doing the cha-cha slide and the Cupid shuffle at 65 years old on the dance floor. I needed to set a goal, and I needed to take action. And instead of instead of letting life happen to me, you have to make life happen to you. So I set about a not only a practical goal of where I'm heading with my life, but I set out a plan, and this is what I wanted to do. And it's a jumbled mess along the way looking back, but it's still this whole reinvention has been wonderful. So I would say, put yourself in a position where you do set some goals for where you want to go. Examine the goals frequently, readjust if you need to, and keep moving forward. But always stay in action, and just don't let life happen to you, because if it does, it's never going to take you in the path that you want it to.
That's so true. And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. The number one thing that contributes to customer loyalty is emotions. So move onward and upward faster by gaining significantly deeper insight and understanding of your customer journey and personas with emotional intelligence. With your empathy mapping workshop, you'll learn how to evoke and influence the right customer emotions that generate improved customer loyalty and reduce your cost to operate. Get over your emotional hump now by going to empathymapping.com to learn more. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Doug, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Doug Sandler, are you ready to hoe down?
Okay, let's go.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Staying in the groove. You just got to stay in your zone of genius. Once you start slipping out of that, you become less effective, much less productive, and you slow yourself down. So stay in your zone of genius.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Fail fast, and it's okay to fail.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
This is an easy one. Just return your phone calls. It's amazing how many people don't return their phone calls.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Geez. Let's see. Well, I'm going to say the microphone because I'm in a podcast environment. So I would say that tool I could not deal without.
And what would be one book that you'd recommend to our listeners? And it could be from any genre. And of course, we're going to put a link to Nice Guys Finish First on your show notes page as well.
Thanks, Jim. I always promote this book because I think it's so wonderful with its parable way that it's written. Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Doug Sandler. Okay, Doug, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you. But you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
I'd say that it would be more of a piece of advice, and it's just keep moving. You want to keep moving. You can't stay still. Nothing ever stays the same. You're constantly evolving, and as long as you keep moving, make decisions based upon the decisions. Never have a doubt about the decisions you made. Just keep moving forward. That would be any advice that I would give myself at 25.
Doug, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
The best way to reach me is just through my website, which is DougSandler.com.
Doug Sandler, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you, and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.